going to go super smoothly. Hey, Hannah, how's your day going?
Hello, it's going good actually. Yeah, really
Oh,
good. How are you doing?
good. Yeah, pretty good. I did a workshop this morning, had a
Oh
meeting,
yeah,
feeling productive and energetic, so that's good.
love that.
Okay, so we are going to be talking about repurposing in this little live stream today, and maybe you could share with us some things that you've been repurposing, Hannah.
Yeah, let's just go straight into it. I love that.
Yeah, no preamble. We're just
No,
diving straight in.
straight into it. Yeah, I love repurposing. So I feel like I'm literally repurposing everything all the time. I feel like nothing I've said is an original thought anymore. It's all repurposed. But I think my main thing at the moment is that I'm currently in a launch for the Best 90 Days Ever, which is my marketing membership. And this is my 15th launch of
I
it.
couldn't believe that when you said that. That is
I know.
amazing.
I told my
15.
dad, and he was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, I know." So I've done this 15 times and it actually does look quite similar every time, but I feel like I kind of repurpose the main information and then I just kind of make it fit the different seasons. So like this has more of a spring theme now. It's like very much about the speed element of it and getting things done quickly, whereas the previous one that started in January was much more like new year, new marketing, get everything going. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of at the moment, just repurposing a lot of that launch content.
Okay, so what does that actually look like? In the sense that, like you say repurposing, but are we talking like, are you literally reusing the same posts, but just changing the caption? Like, what's your sort of repurposing plan when you do this?
I feel like there's like a combination of both. Sometimes I will literally reshare the exact same post. So the first post that goes out, which I haven't shared yet, I will share next Monday, is always exactly the same. So it's the who, what, where, when, why.
Mm,
I can copy and paste that caption. I just change out the date. So that is actually very much the same. But a lot of them it's more taking the idea and then turning it into something else. And I think that's what a lot of people forget to do as well actually with repurposing. I feel like
mm.
they forget there's like two versions of it. You can either repurpose something really small like a literal sentence and turn it into something else, or you can repurpose a whole concept and idea like the big fish challenge that I'm doing at the moment. That's a whole massive thing that I will just turn into something else. So I
Yeah.
feel like you can go both ways with it. There's a whole scale of repurposing.
I think with like reels, for example, people forget that you could. I've seen a lot of people do a reel, it do really well, and then them almost like recreate their own reel. So the
Mm.
concept and the idea is the same, but maybe they slightly tweak the voiceover and have a slightly different call to action, and then maybe they use different b-roll clips, but it's actually basically the same thing.
Mm.
Like they're 50% of the way there and then they're just switching out some bits. And I definitely don't do that enough. Or like, you
Yeah.
said about the sentence, like actually it's that you create a longish reel and then one of the lines is like really powerful. So you make that, like that a reel on its own. I
Yeah.
definitely don't do that enough.
Or you could take it from somewhere else. So if you've done an email that was really good or a carousel post or something, like if one of us says something really good in this live video,
Mm.
then we should clip that and turn it into something else and repurpose it.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking that about these videos is that like we probably could both get a decent number of
Mm.
solo reel. Like it doesn't even need to look like we're having an interview. I've done this with some of my podcast episodes recently. Like obviously I always share a teaser that's me and the guest, but sometimes if I go off on a little rant about something, there'll be like a good clip that's just me. So I'll
Yeah.
just clip that bit out and then it's almost just like a talking head. I mean, it is obvious that it's come from a podcast, but I don't think that matters. It's not obvious necessarily which episode it's from, but it's like a little succinct lesson on its own, which I think works quite well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And you know the other place that's really good to get those is voice notes.
Yes.
Sometimes when we voice note each other, I listen back to it and I'm like, what was that idea that I just had? Because I was when you're just like talking it through with someone, you come up with all of these gems because you're not like overthinking it and,
Yeah.
massively like being a perfectionist about it.
One day I would love to like genuinely use one of our voiceovers, like our voice notes as the audio for real. I
That
just
would
think
be
that'd
so
be so
funny.
funny.
Oh my god.
One
So
that
what
oh
I
sorry,
was
go
going to
on.
say, what are you repurposing at the moment then?
So one that I did a workshop all about podcast pitching, and I made that into a carousel. So obviously, if you're at the workshop, it was like more information and more in depth, but actually, a lot of the information was in the carousel. Another one that I'm trying to get better at doing, but I'm not great at, is taking the transcript from a podcast episode and
Mm,
then turning that into a blog post, because like most of the writing is there. I think you can also use ChatGPT a bit for that, although it does still sound a bit roboty. But like putting the transcript in, like to some AI tool, and then getting it to turn like the structure into a blog post.
yeah.
I think those are the main ways. I feel like there's still so much I should be doing. I definitely think these lives could be really good, and I want to try and use them more for content. Even like we both sent an email after last week's live, so that inspired other
Yeah.
content. So we did a little bit of repurposing.
I feel like sometimes it is just like you must feel like this a lot with the podcast, but sometimes it is just putting yourself in situations where you're having different conversations.
Yeah.
And that's what helps you to create more content because like we always find something new to talk. We've talked about repurposing loads of times, like not necessarily
Yeah, yeah.
online, but between us. But we always seem to find something new to come from it. And even from the lives that we did last time, I feel like we were able to take something away from each of those, and that's the thing that can be repurposed.
Mm. Do you think people need to have like almost like a repurposing process? So like for example, one thing that you're really good at, and this is something I'm not good at, is you're really good at storing your content in a useful way,
Mm.
whereas I feel like mine's a little bit more chaotic and all over the place, and so then it makes it harder for me to find it and reuse it. Maybe tell us about how you store your content.
Yeah, but you have a Lois,
I have a
so
Lois. Yeah, Lois, who's in the
that's
chat.
helpful.
Lois does help me. Yeah. Everyone needs a Lois.
Yes, we all need Lois. I do have a system, and I'm not perfect with it by all means. Like, I don't want to come on and be like, yeah, I'm the number one, like, queen of it. But like, so I also have a course called Creative Content Library, and that for me is what has changed the way I create content because when you're trying, like, we're trying to be repetitive here. I'm trying to be known for 10-minute marketing and things like that. And so I'm gonna run out of things to say if I don't repurpose my stuff. There's only like a finite number of things I can actually say about it. Some of
Mm,
it is gonna have to be reused and like turned into something else. So I feel like the system just helps me to know which bits are worth repurposing. Like I don't put
okay.
everything in there. There are some posts that, I did that post yesterday with my big fringe and I won't repurpose that.
You should
That that fringe is staying there. But they,
buried at the end of a carousel. It's like
yeah,
a
exactly.
reward just for the people. If you
To
haven't
get
seen it,
through it.
you need to go and hunt it down on Hannah's profile. It's Hannah with like jet black hair. That was the bit that shocked me the most. I mean, the
Oh.
fringe was iconic in itself.
I love that. Kat commented on it and said, I want to research the pipeline from emo hair to being self employed because she feels like there's a correlation between them. I was like, yeah.
Documenting your career journey through your hairstyles.
Yeah. But yeah, things like that, you can do off the cuff stuff and that it
Mm,
doesn't, not everything needs to be repurposed. But I feel like if you can get into a bit of a system where, you know, as you're writing an email, for example, you are quickly dragging it over into Trello or whatever platform you want to use because each of these lines could be a carousel post. It's just going to save you time. And I think it helps you get into that flow as well so that you can batch create lots of content at once rather than every morning being like, oh my goodness, what am I going to post today? Better. Oh God, I was going to say something really bad.
mhm.
No, better,
I'm glad you stopped yourself.
I stopped myself. I've got to like scrabble around thinking of something,
Mm,
whereas then you have this whole library of content to just pick from. So it does save time, but I think you have to find a system that works for you.
I know. And I think that's the thing, is that often, like, lots of people have systems and ways of doing things, and you do have to find the way that works for me. Because everyone loves Notion, and I want
Mm.
to love Notion so hard, but it just doesn't work for my brain. So I have gone back to Trello because I find that works better. Lois has asked a really good question. She said, blogs to emails and vice versa feels like a natural repurpose. Is there anything to do with SEO and repurposing that we need to be aware of? I don't think there's any issues with SEO in that context, because the emails are sitting in someone's inbox. They're not, like Google's not searching them. So I don't think there's any SEO implications. So that
Mm.
is a really good repurpose. I
I
guess, like, oh, sorry, go on.
No, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, one thing that I am aware of is that I think if you did that all of the time, like, you want your content for your email subscribers, I think, to be
Mm.
a little bit more special. Like, like that you're rewarding them for giving you their email address, and you're giving them something a bit extra. So I think if you did that exclusively, people will be like, well, what's the point of being on your email list? I think if you take your blog post and like maybe you give some extra context or extra behind the scenes, or just do something different with it, then I think that
Mm.
works really well. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that I used to like doing, I haven't blogged in ages, I have to be honest with you, is like in the email, maybe I give, or in the post or something, you give like 2 of 5 examples, and then in the blog, you give all 5. So
Right,
you
yeah, yeah,
almost
yeah.
tease it within it. But the one thing I'd say with SEO is that to just think about, is the way that you talk in your emails going to be including your keywords and the things that people are searching for? Because, like, in my emails, I'm probably not mentioning the keywords that I want to hit, because you
Oh,
already
yeah,
know, like, we
yeah.
already know you're going to talk about branding. So
Mm.
you might not even say the word
Reference it in the same
branding.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's something to think about when you're going from email to blog post. Just make
Yes.
sure that you get those. Yeah, that you almost like over explain maybe and get those keywords in. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think
Yeah.
definitely
Nice.
Trello has helped me. It's still not a perfect system for sure, but I'm getting there. Oh, someone's asked if they can. Annika has asked if she can
Yeah.
still join the Big Fish Challenge. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
100%. Yeah.
You're only one day behind, so you're fine.
Well, exactly.
Catch
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
all on there when you sign up. You get
And
both.
and you know how you've got a competition going on. People can still enter that
Mm. Yeah.
retrospectively, can't they? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
perfect. Um,
So, is there anything that you struggle with when it comes to repurposing? Like, I know you said about Notion, but is there anything else that you find difficult?
I think my brain, like, doesn't naturally, I think it's the conditioning, isn't it, that we always have to
Mm.
be creating something new and fresh. So I think I do have a bit of a mental block with that. One of the things that I did the other day, which actually worked really well, was Lois sent me a reel where someone had said, go and look at your past 8 reels, find the one that had performed the best and repost it without changing anything. And I didn't follow that exactly. So what I did was I
Okay.
found the best performing reel, which actually happened to be the reel about my rejection sticker chart. And
Yeah.
I'd actually recorded it when it was for pre-sale. So all I did was I trimmed off the end where it said it's now open for pre-sale. I reposted it exactly. I did change the caption. I didn't keep that exactly the same, but I reposted the video, same audio, like same music, everything, and posted it again. And it actually did really well again. And they were only like
Ah.
2 weeks apart, I reckon, maybe 3. Um, and I was that felt uncomfortable to me, which was
Mm.
interesting. Like the idea of just posting it exactly as is. I mean, I know I didn't exactly, but I pretty much did. And so I think that is a block for me that I need to get better at. Yeah,
But
sort of.
what if the reel you were going to share was like yesterday and that was the best performing one?
Well, yeah, I think her thing was like, well, I don't know. Maybe you don't
Maybe
do
it
it
was
for
like
one
go back
yesterday.
to a block of 8 or something.
Yeah, I
Do you know what
think
I
she
mean?
was assuming that people weren't posting reels like that often.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't remember the exact details. I mean,
I
if it was the yesterdays, it probably wouldn't be your best performing yet because it
That's
had only
true.
just come out. But yeah,
Yeah.
what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I was going to say, I think this is actually a challenge. That's something that I hear quite a lot is how people worry about repurposing if they're not posting very much because, like, for us, we post quite a lot. So if we wanted to repurpose something, like, I could repurpose something monthly, I think, and it
Yeah,
would kind of just blend in. But if you've only posted one
once a
post a
week.
week, yeah,
Yeah.
there's only going to be 3 posts in between those 2 monthly posts.
But
So I
saying
think
that,
that's
you
something to
could
think
go
about.
back a year and
Yeah.
easily. I mean, the whole thing that this lady was talking about was supposedly to like hack the algorithm. So
Okay.
it almost like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand it, but I just thought I'd give it a go anyway. But I think that is, yeah, I think it doesn't have to be like that. I do think one of the things that I'm not very good at is looking at what content performs the best. I don't
Mm,
really look at the stats that often on my content. And so actually, like, I just do you know what the thing that I keep thinking about as well is your advice of like getting sentences.
mm,
So I keep thinking, like, I should go back through my best performing posts and just find sentences from there
yeah.
and then like put those on threads or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
We should you know how we set the task in the other live
Mm.
to tick off one of the like things that you're
Yes.
procrastinating on? We should do a task for every live. So I feel
Okay.
like that should be the task
Yeah.
to go and have a look through like your best performing posts and pick out the sentences that are good.
And maybe pick like 4 or 5
Yeah.
that you can then post later this week in a
Yeah.
different format.
Use them as a
Yes.
reel, like use them as a subject line. A lot of people
Yes.
in the Big Fish challenge have been using them as like the first post, like the first line on LinkedIn, which I think is
Oh,
really
that
nice.
is really
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, that is cool. And that's the thing, there's so many different places that you can actually repurpose things.
Yeah.
And I do think your point about, like, didn't someone ask you, like, oh, what was it they asked you and you were like, that's not my advice because I think you should be repetitive. They were like, how
Oh
much
yeah,
is
how
too repetitive? And you were like, I
they
just
said
don't.
how can I be less
Oh, that
repetitive?
was
And
it.
I was
Yeah.
like, I don't have any advice for that.
Yeah.
You think you should be
Be
more.
repetitive. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually I was talking to Steve about that, Steve Folland about it, and he was like, yeah, like everyone needs that reminder because we
Mm,
often assume that people know exactly what we do, the services that we have and the offers that we have. And actually, people don't because we are all busy, but you're then missing out all your new audience. So if you're attracting all these new people, they've not seen any of that amazing content before, and they've not like heard about any of the stuff that you offer and any of the stuff that you do. So
mm.
you're just not sharing it with them basically.
Yeah, Lois said it's that thing that not everyone consumes all of your content. And you totally see that.
Yeah.
Where you feel like you're talking about something loads, and then someone will be like, what are you talking about? I haven't heard anything about it. And you're like,
Yeah.
what? How is that even a thing? Laura's asked, how quickly do you recommend to repost? So if Hannah, if you were reposting content, how much would you space it out? Obviously, it does depend on how often you post.
Yeah. Um right, this is against my own advice.
I love this, just to confuse everybody.
I would say for me a year.
Oh, you wouldn't repost anything from the last year?
Well, I would I like maybe, but like it wouldn't be my strategy to do that. And that is because I think my
Interesting.
content is so seasonal. Like
Okay.
I very purposely make it quite seasonal. I want you to like look at it and feel like it's posted right now. Do you know what I mean? And so a lot of my stuff almost just rules itself out because
Yeah.
I can't share my Christmas post now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I have my Trello boards and I have so at the moment I'm working from the January, February, March one. So I have them in blocks like that. I have one Trello board that is just Christmas stuff. I have one that would just be like I'll make one now that's just like big fish stuff. Um, I have like April launch of the best 90 days, library launch. So they're all kind of separate so that when I'm like moving into that content, so this week I'll just start opening up the April launch Trello board for the best 90 days
Mm,
ever. And so I won't have used that since last April. So
right.
that's why it's kind
Okay.
of a year.
Okay. I think for me, my sort of ideal, I think like quarterly. So like 3 months,
Yeah.
I would happily repost something that was like 3 months ago, 6 months ago. The reel that I did, I reckon, was 3 weeks ago. So I think you
Mm.
can do it, but I think it probably depends on what the content was as to whether that'll work or not. Like I think it only worked because it was something that I was still talking about. It was something that people were interested in. Like it was something that I was selling. So actually reposting it and reminding everybody that it was available like actually worked quite well.
Mm.
I don't think that would work for every piece of content. Um,
And I feel like
yeah,
if you don't want to do that, so say like what you did by resharing that exact reel, like almost exact. If you don't want to do that, you could have really easily just changed the hook on the front or something.
yeah,
Like just changed it to a different angle about it, or shared some reviews from the people who've received them. Like
yeah,
added that over the top. So there are loads of ways that you can really quickly change it so that you can still repost it. Because if you're like, especially if you're in a launch or if you're like a product business, you feel like there's not much more you can say,
yeah, yeah,
but there
yeah,
is.
yeah.
You just have to
There always
reuse it.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it is going to be different depending on the sort of content that you create. Like if you're creating educational carousels,
Mm.
like maybe you leave it 6 months between. Although this was really interesting to me. So most people, I would say, won't massively notice that you've repurposed. Like, I think probably some people noticed that I repurposed that reel because it was so close together. I was looking, this was probably about a year ago, at Chris Doe's content. And
Oh
there was a
yeah.
phase where I saw the repeat pattern, and he was literally
Mm.
posting the exact posts from like, I think it was about 3 months previous, but like identical posting. And I thought that was so interesting because like you could just go down and see his grid like match. But because he posts so much, it was quite far down. So I don't
Mm.
think most people would notice. It was just because there was a post that I had stuck out to me when he posted the first time that I was like, hang on a second. And I went down and
Yeah.
looked, and then I could see him like posting. I think he did them in slightly a different order, but it was from around the same time. And I just, yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I find it really interesting to watch what other people are doing. And I think like you often say like people aren't going to get annoyed by it. Like I wasn't
Mm.
annoyed that Christo was reposting his
No.
content. I was like, oh, this is actually really interesting. I want to see what his like
Yeah.
strategy is. And I think most people either will be like, oh, this was really useful the first time, I really appreciate the reminder this
Mm.
time, or they just won't even remember that you posted it before and they'll enjoy it again.
But that's the thing. If it's good enough to remember,
Yeah.
then that means it's good enough
Should
to share
post it.
again. Yeah, if
Yeah,
they've
totally.
actually recognized that post, that
Yeah.
means you've done really well. Like you've done a good thing there.
Yeah.
And I do feel like maybe with the Chris Do stuff, like he's probably one of those examples where his audience is growing so quickly all the time that
Yes.
actually it really
I was
does
going to
make
say that.
sense for him to
Yeah.
be sharing that
But I do
content.
often think that, like in the last few years, my account has probably doubled. And so, like, I could share something from 2 years ago and, like, people would just not have seen it
Yeah.
because there's so many different people following me now. I think in my head, I, this is like, I try not to go off on a tangent, but we both did a talk recently at an event. And, we were talking about how when I'm nervous, I talk really fast and you were like helping me to slow down. And we were talking about how I almost needed to slow down to the point that it felt a bit uncomfortable, that I was
Mm,
speaking so slow. And I think it's the same with repurposing. Like you almost
yeah.
need to talk about something so much that it just feels a little bit uncomfortable to you. And so then that's probably the right amount for everybody else.
Yeah, that is true. I do feel like a lot of marketing is uncomfortable stuff. Like
Yeah.
it is putting yourself out there. Like you can stay in your comfort zone with it, but then at some point you are going to have to kind of go to like the next level. Um As Lois says, big fish would repost, as though they already have a huge growing following. Yes, because we do. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think I actually do find that a really helpful marker for things is like how uncomfortable do I feel about it.
Mm,
And I think if like not in a horrible unsafe way, I think like we need to like clarify the difference between like safety and just feeling a little bit uncomfortable, right? And
yeah,
so, you know, it's that kind of like, oh, well, I actually feel quite comfortable with this, so maybe I need to push a little bit further so that
yeah,
I'm like putting my toe out into the discomfort zone. And
yeah. I
then
like
maybe
that.
that's like, and I think that does link back to the big fish thing, you know, like you're letting people choose how much they want to push themselves.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be different for everybody.
yeah. I
Lois says
like
she feels uncomfortable with all her
that.
marketing.
Good.
Well, yeah. So, you know, like you do a bit and then it
Yeah,
becomes comfortable and then you like step it up a notch and it becomes, you know, so like
yeah.
maybe I think sometimes, well, if anybody knows me from like any of my content, I do love setting myself challenges. So I think that's a
Mm,
really good way like of helping yourself like be really intentional about doing something. So like maybe it's that you commit to talking about your mailing list once a week on your
yeah,
stories. And that might feel too much to you, but actually that'll probably help with people signing up. Or, you know, like maybe it's that you are gonna set up a Trello board and you're gonna repurpose your content like every 3 months, or, you
yeah.
know, sort of set yourself a bit of a challenge that you can then work towards. Can
Well, it's
often
like your
help.
rejection challenge, isn't it? Like it
Yeah.
is just helping you to keep going even when it feels uncomfortable. And it also gets less and less uncomfortable as you're doing it. Like all
Yeah.
of it does because you're
Yeah.
like moving on to the next level, aren't you? Like as soon as you get used to it, it's going to start feeling less
It's
uncomfortable.
like a video game. One of my podcast guests, Katie, used a video game analogy in a post I recorded with her recently, and she was talking about it from the sort of concept of like you kind of just have to go through running your business and work it out as you go.
Mm,
And she was like, there's a lot of people who try and go ahead and find the cheats online. And like, while sometimes that's
yeah.
okay, like actually it's not as fulfilling or it's not as
Yes.
like valuable to you if you've just sort of cheated. But I think it's almost the same with this, where like if you get stuck on a level, you have to do it over and over and over again until you get that level.
Yeah.
Then it feels comfortable and you move on to the next one, which is a bit harder. And so then you're in that sort of like, oh, this is hard again. And you do it over and over again until you get past that level. I think there's a lot of video game analogies in
I
running a
think there is.
business.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh, that's so
No, I
funny.
agree.
Okay, any
Okay.
last top tips? Is there anything that we've missed that you think is like repurposing 101 that people could be doing?
I was just going to ask you about like repurposing branding and
Oh,
almost
good
like
question.
because I feel like we should talk about branding because that's
Yeah.
what you do.
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel like actually the branding can make repurposing really easy as well because if you set up like the templates and things, then it's really easy to make a carousel post look really different with
Yeah.
like a different, like even just an inverted template of the colors or something like that. And I think that can really speed up the process too.
I mean, I think it's the same with design as it is with content, where people feel this pressure to have something new and fresh all the time. And
Mm,
I think this is where you see a lot of businesses get sucked in by trends and trying to keep up with everybody else, but then their brand gets really diluted and it's changing all of the time. And I think it's the same with branding, where we almost have to be like a little bit uncomfortable as to how similar everything looks.
yeah.
But I think for repurposing, like something that is massively helping me, and Lois helps me with this, so she can testify to this. We set up a project in Adobe Express, and it's got all like different brand kits in it. So, like one for the podcast, one for my brand. And I basically made a template for my carousel posts. And it means that if I'm really busy, I can write a carousel post and just send it to Lois, and she's got the template there and she just drops it in.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
so, like, I definitely like branding definitely does help with repurposing. I mean, I think in terms of like repurposing branding, with branding, you want everything to be like consistent because that's what
Mm,
builds trust. I mean, it's the same with content, right? If that's why people talk about how niching down helps with your content, because if you're talking about one thing over and over and over again and people know what to expect, that builds a trust. Whereas if you're jumping around loads of different topics that are completely unrelated, they don't know what they're there for. But
Yeah.
so with branding, I think like the repurposing, I guess, is that you do just keep everything really consistent. Like that is the point of it. And like every now and then, I think, I think another misconception is that once you've got your branding sorted, that means you can never change it. I don't
Mm,
think that's true either. Like I think over time you can. So, like, for example, I recently just tweaked some of the colors in my color palette, like changed one of the greens. And it hasn't like drastically, it's not like I've had a rebrand or anything, but it's just like freshened it up a bit for me. And that's fine. And I'm not going to like lose trust because of that,
yeah.
but it just like makes it more enjoyable for me to use. It's just like something a little bit different. So I think it's getting a balance where on the most part everything looks the same and you're just reusing the same assets, the same colors, same fonts over and over again, but then allowing yourself like for your branding to evolve with you and just tweaking things a little bit as you go.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like, again, it's kind of that uncomfortable thing, isn't it? Like, do you feel uncomfortable to keep using the same branding over and over again? Like, that's actually a good thing
Yeah.
because that's what you're going to get known for.
Yeah. I've got one last thing that I wanted to mention that this is a tip of yours that I heard you
Okay.
share. I hope I'm going to repurpose it. Um, I don't think people repurpose the imagery on their like
Mm,
photos that they've taken. So your
yes.
tip is like go into your phone, like you always use pumpkin, like search pumpkins because
Yeah.
you've got loads of pictures of pumpkins. So like are there seasonal things that you can search? Because I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, I must have so much B-roll on my phone that I
Mm,
haven't organized into folders. And actually, if I just scroll back a year or two, I could probably find a whole load of videos I've already taken that I could reuse again now in all sorts of different ways.
100%. Like the post I did yesterday, a lot of them I just searched like C, computer,
Yeah.
T,
I
I
think
just
people
search
forget
these
you can
words.
search like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's really good. Yeah, 100%. And also, a lot of the time you'll be in them, they'll feel like you, there'll be something recognizable in it, like my dogs might be in it or like Tom might be in it, something like that. So it just helps you to like keep building that personal brand, I think.
Totally.
I would much rather use that than stock images.
Yes. Oh,
So
well, this is harsh, but
if they're
stock
good enough.
images in like small business content gives me the ick because
Oh.
that's
Bye,
I went
everyone.
all in. No, like so I have seen some people do it well, but I would rather a lower quality image that you've taken on your phone than this like perfect sort of corporate looking,
Mm,
like I just think it doesn't have as much personality. Like if you're a huge company, like fine, I get it, you use stock photography, but I think for small businesses I'd rather rough and ready like content that you've made yourself than stock images.
yeah, I do agree. I've with content, I do agree. Yeah.
Yeah, dive into, so basically use your own like phone photo library as your content, as your stock image bank, basically.
I like that. What did you
That's a
say? Dive
line.
in.
Dive
There's a
into,
little
oh,
fish pun.
oh yeah, there you go.
I'll have that. I'll
Dive
repurpose
into your
that.
camera roll. Dive into your camera roll
Yes.
and find some content.
I love
There you
that.
go. That's Hannah's line to repurpose somewhere after this live.
I'm writing it down.
Um, Amazing. Thank you so much, Hannah. We'll find a more regular time because obviously this was a different time from last week's. I think we are going to start doing these weekly. We just need to settle on a time that we can both do. But thanks for those of you who joined us. And yeah, and if you're watching on the catch up, the replay, I don't know what the right terminology is, then pop a comment like below and let us know what you're going to repurpose this week or what your one line was from some content you looked through. And we'll be back again probably next week. We're not sure what time yet, but we'll let you know on Instagram.
Amazing. Thank you for having
Thanks.
me.
Thanks for coming. Bye.
Bye.
Oh,
That was
good.
good.
That was fun.
Awesome.